What's up, everybody? This is Mario, and I'm back with another episode of Endurify. And so far, I just want to give a shout out to everybody who's been giving me some support and some love after posting on Facebook and Instagram. I really appreciate the support so far and kind of just the support in my dreams and just kind of in this goal of publishing every single day for a year. And now that I kind of told a bunch of people about this, it's kind of forcing me to up my game, I feel like. So there's a couple of exciting things that are coming next. Just a few of those going to be rolling out some updated podcast art. Might be tweaking the name of the podcast. Also, I need to get a little podcast intro, a little podcast jingle. You can call it whatever you want. And I'm actually getting serious about finding a legit mic and starting to get into some actual editing, because basically what I do is I just use this app called Anchor. I pull it out. It's an app on my phone. I open up my phone. I open up Anchor, I click record, and I just go. And then at the end, once I'm done, I click publish, and it automatically distributes it to all of the different podcasting platforms. So that is, that's basically the way that I podcast, and it's super simple. And I believe that that's kind of the key to being able to publish consistently, especially when you're just getting started with something that's, as new or as challenging as podcasting. But I think that that's true for any sort of big challenge that you're taking on. If that's a podcast, if that's an endurance event, if that's a new habit, like a fitness habit, if it's a new project at work, you really want to try and keep it as simple as you can starting off so that you can be consistent and you can stay in the game. But that's not actually the topic for today. Just kind of wanted to start with that. But as many of you know, I recently completed Half Ironman Oregon, the Oregon 70.3 last Sunday. And if you haven't yet, you can go back and listen to the Ironman Oregon 70.3 recap, where I walk through kind of the whole process and how I surprised my best friend, showed up, had a great race, and had an awesome time surprising him. But the reason why that was... One of the reasons why that was such a different race for me was because it was the first time that I had flown to the race destination. I've been doing triathlons for over 8 years, but every single race that I've done, I've been able to just drive there and just bring my bike. But when I originally came up with the idea of going to surprise my best friend and being there for him on race day and racing with him, one of the first reasons why I kind of dismissed it was because I wasn't really sure how to ship my bike there. And looking back on it, I went through and I did some research, and after going through the process, it was incredibly smooth. And I just think if I would have not done that race and been there for my best friend when he crossed the finish line in his first half Ironman, all because I didn't know how to ship my bike, or I didn't want to go through the process of learning how to ship my bike, I just think it would have been such a big regret. And so I know that there's people who are listening to this who are triathletes, they're endurance athletes, or maybe you're thinking about doing your first half Ironman or your first Ironman, and you want to do it in a super cool location, a really cool destination, all around the US or maybe even international. And if you're going to do that, then one of the things that you need to figure out is how to ship your bike. And so this is going to be kind of like a tactical podcast, but that is the main question that I want to talk through today. And in terms of shipping your bike, there's basically three main options to travel with your bike to your next try. And the first one is by going with a bike transport service. And so there's several companies that are out there that basically specialize in this exact thing, which is getting bikes to some of the larger triathlons or bike-specific races. And the ones that I looked into were Tri Bike Transport and Bike Flights. And I can add links to this, but basically you drop off your bike ahead of time as at a designated bike shop, and then the company takes your bike in a large trailer or truck to the actual race venue. And the upside to using a service like this is that you don't have to take your bike apart and you don't need to put it back together. Because you're gonna see with some of the other options, that's what you're gonna need to do. Now, the downside is that you're gonna have to drop off your bike more than a week in advance. And that was one of the biggest issues that I ran into is as I was I was in Colorado and I needed to get my bike to Salem, Oregon. And then I needed to get my bike back from Salem, Oregon to North Liberty, Iowa. So it was a little bit of a complicated setup, first of all. And I ran into a couple of main problems. The first problem that I ran into is this exact thing that I just mentioned is if you're going to need to drop off your bike at a specific destination, you need to do it it was like a week and a half before the race. And I needed my bike in order to train those last couple of weeks because I wasn't as consistent with my training leading up until that date. And I didn't have another bike that I could use. So if I were kind of planning ahead and doing it kind of the way that you should, I don't think this would have been as big of an issue because I could have used another bike. I could have rented a bike. But for the specific scenario that I was in, it just didn't work for me. Another issue that I ran into is that it was going to be around like $400 to $450. And that was more than what I paid to sign up for the race. And so that's just one thing to be aware of when you use these bike transport services is that they can get a little pricey, and that's just part of it. If you're kind of looping that into the whole race day experience, then it may not be a problem, but just something to be aware of. So that's basically your first option is to use a bike transport service, something like TriBike Transport or Bike Flights. Then the next option, what you can do is one that I actually also started to pursue, which is packing your bike in a bike bag or a case. And when it comes to bike bags, there's a couple of different types of bike bags that you can look into. There's hard cases, there's soft cases, and obviously the hard cases, they offer more protection. They add a little bit more height, which might add for your shipping costs. But the soft shell cases, they have a little bit of padding, but they're basically less protective than a hard case. And so what I ended up doing is I was looking at bike cases. And again, this is another thing that was like crazy expensive. I couldn't believe they're anywhere from $300 to $750 to get a bike case. And I was like, I'm not doing that. So I went on Amazon and just kind of looked at some of the options. And I bought a bike bag on Amazon for around $55. And I looked at the reviews. They were mostly like 4.2. And at the time, I didn't really have another option that I was pursuing. So I just went for it and I bought the bike bag and I had them ship it to where I was staying. And so when the bike bag arrived, I did kind of see that it had a little bit of padding, but really not a lot. And so what you would probably have to do if you were to use like a bike bag that doesn't have a lot of protection is you'd probably have to stuff your bike with some cardboard to make sure that it is protected. So I started going that route and that option. But one of the downsides that I already had kind of mentioned is just that in order to get your bike in the bike bag, you need to disassemble it. And I am honestly for riding like tri bikes and road bikes for like over 8 years, it's kind of embarrassing for me to admit this, but I don't know anything about bikes and I'm also not super handy, and it's just not the way that I like to spend my time. So the thought of trying to remove like my pedals, the thought of removing like my aero bars, the thought of removing my front tire, my back tire, kind of, taking apart parts of the chain, things like that. I just quickly realized that was going to take me a long time. And taking it apart is just one issue, but actually assembling it once I got it in the actual bike bag and got it to the destination was another issue. So things to keep in mind if you're going to be using a bike bag or a bike carrier. If you're going to get a hard case, it might be a little bit more expensive. Like I said, if you're going to get a soft bag, then it's not going to be as protective, and you're going to need to take apart your bike. So if those are the first two options, what the heck do you do, right? So far we've gone through kind of using a tri-bike transportation service or a bike shipping service. We've talked about getting a bike case or a bike bag. But the third option is the one that I basically went with, and that's kind of taking your bike on the plane as regular baggage. But I got my bike disassembled at a bike shop, and then I got it assembled at the race. So let me walk you through how exactly I did this. So as I was explaining kind of my situation to one of my coworkers, Mr. Jason Shaw, he was just like, dude, don't use a $55 bag on Amazon. Just take it to a bike shop and have them disassemble it. And so I had them disassemble it, and it cost $60 to have them disassemble it, put it in a box, and it was actually a massive cardboard box. It was a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be because it had a lot of protection and a lot of padding, which made me feel good about it. So it was just $60 to have them take it apart and then put it in the box. Then I needed to get the box to the airport, and once I got to the airport, I ended up only paying about $30 because it's just sports equipment to get it as a carry-on or to get it as a checked bag on the flight. And then what I ended up doing is I was looking on the Ironman website because, I had the bike disassembled on the plane. The next thing that I needed to do was to get it assembled for the race and then disassembled again and put in the box for my flight back. So what Ironman does is they partner with another company that's there that I believe it's called Play Tri Sports. And what they do is they have all of these different bike services. And what I did is I paid $250, which seems like a lot, but to have them assemble the bike, do a safety inspection, and get it kind of tuned up before the race. That's one thing. And then when I was actually on the course, after I'd gotten off the bike and I started my run, they went into the transition and took my bike apart and put it in the box so that immediately after the race, once I was done and I had kind of cooled off and I went to my transition, there was the bike fully disassembled and in the box and ready for me to take to the airport. So the whole process of actually getting my bike there, once I got to the Ironman Village, getting my bike assembled only took like 45 minutes, and then not having to wait at all after the race to have the bike in the box was like a 5-star experience. And so then the only other thing to mention is that it did cost another $30 for the flight back. So overall, it did end up costing around. So if I'm doing some quick math here, it would be around $370 to ship my bike to this race. But I feel like that was totally worth it because it just kind of opens up training and racing to all of these new destinations, and being at the race for my best friend crossing the finish line was one of the best experiences that I've ever had. So that was kind of that third option, and that's the one that I went with because I was kind of in a little bit of a pickle, not sure how to get my bike to the race and then also get it back to my end destination. So basically, just to recap, those are kind of the three main ways to get your bike to a race when you need to ship it. So the first is using a bike shipping service. The second is using like a bike bag or a carrier. And then the third is just kind of taking it apart and bringing it on the plane as luggage. And really, I tell you this kind of like I said at the beginning, just to make you aware and equip you with the information so that if you ever want to take your bike to a destination type race, you know what your options are. And for me, this was, how do I get my bike was one of the biggest questions that I had. And after going through the process, it's really not that complicated. And I would highly recommend it to a lot of you just to open up the racing experience more broadly. And so kind of the main, as I bring it back to you, the main message that I have is, when you're coming up with like a big idea and a dream, some sort of big goal, and if there's something that's limiting you with something that's like logistical, try not to let that get in the way of going after that big dream, because it is something that has been done before. It's something that can be just overcome, and it's just a new experience. And that's why it was just kind of stressful for me, because I had never done it before. And so as I bring it back to you, I just kind of want you to think about that. But that is what I have for today. I hope that helps, and I hope you all have an amazing day.